Hi, and welcome back to Ladies of Another View. Heidi popped in here. Where were you, Heidi?
Oh, just hiding around the corner,
Well, I want to welcome our next guest, Keith Cooper. He's going to talk to us about the whole plan for reparations in San Francisco, which is crazy. $5 million a person they're proposing. And he's the president and CEO of One Core Consulting, which specializes in providing structured support for startup and small aerospace businesses. He is also a member of Project 21, which is a conservative Black organization. So welcome to the show, Keith.
Patty, thank you for having me.
Keith, I just barely scratched the surface of your resume, and we'll get into that maybe a little bit more later, because you're a highly decorated veteran in the military, served in Iraq, so thank you for that.
Thank you.
So, you're not just a fly-by-night opinion maker. You care about your country. You are successful. And what do you think? Let's talk about what's going on in San Francisco. They are proposing $5 million a person in reparations. Then they can buy a house for $1 million. And then they're also talking about a guaranteed income in the $800,000 a year range. What is your take on all of this?
Well, the whole piece on sensitive reparations has to be on the rubric of what really the problem is. And the problem is focused primarily on racism in America, and they're addressing it by trying to throw money at it. And when I look at that whole piece, it's almost like it's being pandered to a certain ethnic group at the expense of others. So when you break down San Francisco, the $5 million you spoke of, the $97,000 a year for 25 years means another $2.5 million. And then you go talk about the $1 to buy a house. It's not even the point of who pays for that. It's how do we even get that far before we started talking about ways to fix the problem.
Can you explain for our guests, what does reparations even mean? What is the definition, just to kind of help catch us all up to speed a bit?
Well, I think reparations depends on who you ask more than anything else, but it's a reconciliation for past sins, past things that have gone wrong. And we see it throughout our nation, right? You take a look at what happened with the Japanese Americans in the internment in World War II. You see it with the indigenous population, which was recently paid a couple of years ago for $1.3 billion. And we see it throughout different times, a way to make up for past sins and past deprivations that have caused an ethnic group of a type of people to not get what they should have based upon, I would say, the American dream.
Well, yeah, I mean, you've got Native Americans. The Irish weren't treated so nice in the beginning. And then you have those poor Japanese Americans that were put in internment camps. And, I think people can be pretty mean to one another, and sometimes it's out of ignorance. But then now we're kind of bending over backwards to try to make up for past sins of our ancestors to the ancestors of the people that suffered. And I think that's the key. We're talking about the ancestors. Is there equal opportunity today? For the most part, yes. I mean, that's what we need to be focusing on. We can't undo history. And why? What is the mentality? Like, why would anybody in San Francisco, where there wasn't even any slavery, why should they be getting $5 million?
Well, Patty, it goes beyond that. I mean, you take a look at San Francisco, which was a free state in 1850, and very little documented slavery, if any, as you just mentioned. But San Francisco also, with 900,000 people, average income about 160,000, there are going to be a lot of single moms paying a big bill. And we have to ask if that's the right thing to do. And you're right, there are many ethnic groups that have gone through the United States that had some type of real racism against them. The Irish in the 1850s, the Polish in the 1920s. We already talked about the Asian American and the common denominator of the indigenous population, African Americans, which has gone on for years. So every piece of our country, every fabric of our nation has seen racism in some sort. But the question goes back to not how do we look in the past, but how do we look to the future? And it's going from the present to the future is where we have to go, and not from the present to the past.
So I was reading some things about this, and then there was some other points of view that were talking about kind of how you were saying, like how to make it better going forward. So is there other options? Have you, and this is maybe something you're not familiar with, I don't know, baby bonds, have you heard that talked about as more of an equalizer across?
No, you're Heidi, right? I got it right?
Yes, yeah, correct.
Yeah, Heidi, that's a great point. I think we have to look at opportunity, and there are other areas. You look at some of the other cities that are instituting some type of reparations. It's not all money. It may be opportunity for lower loans. It may be, as you mentioned, baby bonds. It may be something else. It may be educational aspects of it. And I think that we have to look at the whole area, whole rubric of opportunities that's there to really try to, not just make up, because we can't, but we have to go forward. And whatever we come up with has to be a solution that betters our country, not just one ethnic group.
Yeah.
I agree. I think it should be colorblind. And I thought we were moving in that direction. And I don't know what happened in the last few years. It seems like we're moving backwards. One of our co-hosts grew up in the projects. And she says, she couldn't afford, she didn't have good shoes. And so it's hard for the people. Let's just look at their socioeconomic situation, regardless of race. Let's look at their economic, their educational opportunities and make those fair for everybody. Because the more we just concentrate on race, don't you feel like we're creating more division? I mean, you as a black man, do you feel like, wait a minute, stop? I'm educated. I have some good opportunities here. But in some ways, is us going overboard making things worse for you in terms of let's start to erase the kind of diversity or divisions, I should say?
Well, I think you made a couple good points, Patty. We are the United States of America. We're becoming the divided states of America, and this is not helping. Addressing the problems of racism is not a bad thing. I mean, Eric Holder talked about it. Bill O'Reilly talked about it. Other of us have talked about it. But let's have the conversation. Let's not throw a solution at where we're not sure the problem is. But as a person growing up in America, I grew up in a very, I would say, secluded space in Alaska. And then I went to West Point, which is also somewhat secluded later on. And then in the military for 26 years. So kind of separate from the real problems that have occurred until I went into the business world, and then you see it. But this is not helping anybody, and it's making us more divided when you focus at one ethnic group at the expense of others. I mean, I have gone through, and like the person who's your producer, seen problems. I've experienced problems. But we have to ask ourselves, how do we get better as a nation, not looking at ourselves individually?
Absolutely. Keith, what would you like for our viewers to take away to be thinking points for this segment?
And I would say that when you look at what's going on in San Francisco, don't ignore it. It's a boulder on top of a mountain that's going to roll down unless someone guides it. Come up with meaningful discussion points with your elected officials, because it's going to spread. And unless we find ways we can guide the discussion, it's going to cause all of us a lot of pain and a lot more division. So my thoughts to your viewers throughout the areas that you have a lot of people who are concerned about this is it's not about the conversation. It's about the expected outcome of monetary compensation that bothers most people. And that's what I'd like them to take away.
Thank you so much, Keith. We're going to be joined by you just after the break. Come and join us back here on Ladies of Another View.
Thank you.